Before we get started, I would like to just briefly go over the self-determination program. For those of you who are not familiar with the program, by a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with the program? Okay, so yeah, I think it would be helpful to just briefly go over the program. And we do have a resource booth in the other room, so our team is there with lots of flyers and information about how to enroll in the program and more information about the program. But just briefly, I'd like to just go over the program. The self-determination program is a voluntary program available to regional center clients, typically over the age of 3. And the program provides participants with an individual budget for a 12-month period. And the budget is based on what traditional services the regional center would fund for that participant. Once the participant and the regional center have agreed on a budget and the budget becomes certified, then the participant can work with the facilitator if they choose to work with the facilitator, or the regional center can support with developing a spending plan. The spending plan will outline how the participant plans to utilize their individual budget in a 12-month period, what services and supports they would like to utilize to help them meet their IDP goals. And they would then work with the financial management service to help them onboard providers and pay providers. And so that's very brief overview. Again, we have a resource booth in the other rooms, so hopefully you can come by and get some information. So today, moderating the panel with me, we have one of our outstanding participant choice specialists, Beatrice.
Hello, good morning. My name is Beatrice Galvez. I'm a participant choice specialist with our SDP team. And my role in the team is just helping, I work closely with the independent facilitators and the CSEs to help build that individual budget that Alejandra mentioned and just help with any budget needs that may come up during that 12-month period.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's do introductions first. We'll pass the mic down.
My name is Gregory Harrison. I'm a client advocate of Inland Regional Center.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Equidad.
Hello, my name is Alina Abdul-Hakeem. My son is in self-determination. He's 24, and this is his 5th year in program.
My name is Jan Hopsbig. My daughter would have been in her 6th year of the self-determination program, and
I'm Tina Ewing Wilson, Buddy, and I've been in self-determination since 2001. I entered in a pilot project to help prove we could do this. So I've been in self-determination before it was really a thing.
Thank you so much for being here today. So we're going to go ahead and get started with some panel questions. And for this question, we can start with you, Tina. How did you first learn about the self-determination program and what made you say yes to it?
My friend Ace Atkinson of What Was There in 12 is the one who introduced me to the concept. And he sent me to an SDP conference where I learned more about it, and Doug Pascover was at that conference teaching. He's now my IF. I decided I wanted to do it because I really wasn't happy in boarding care, and day program didn't really fit. And I liked the idea of having more control and more choices. So that's how I got started in that.
well, I first heard about the self-determination program from my service coordinator years ago. She asked, do you want to be put on this list for this thing? And I said, okay, sure, put me on the list. I was always up for just about anything to help my daughter. And so then we finally got to orientation, and I went to some conferences and learned about self-determination. and realized that it would be a great fit for us. We had limited services at the time. I think we had maybe 12 hours of respite. And with her medical condition, we thought, wow, we can have some other things that might, support her. So that's why we said yes, and went from there.
Well, my son, he was a part of the Lottery Pick the Pilot program, and so as well, the service coordinator told us about that. And so I had a little chance to research and do some looking, and why not? I'm kind of proactive, why not make things better or have the opportunity? First of all, I am not from California, and I tell people this. There's a wonderful opportunity here that you do not have elsewhere with the Ranchman Act, with the regional centers themselves and traditional services, let alone the self-determination program. So my perspective can be a little bit different than others to see how wonderful these opportunities are. So another layer, it was just another layer for me to add to say yes to it. So it was just a little bit of information, and you guys probably won't have to go through what we went through at first to get through it, but it was a great program. There was no reason for me to say no at all.
So the reason I choose this program because I worked with Gregory and he was on the pilot program, and I saw how cool this program was, that he was in charge of his own different resources. So with the help of Gregory, I started with self-determination.
Well, at first when I learned about the program was through the lottery, but I did not get picked, and thank goodness, because I did not know a lot about it. So I did my own research, and I went ahead and got picked at the second lottery and had a good.
That's a little bit hard to answer, because I've rebuilt my team several times. My original team, I started out by hiring one of the people that worked in my day program, and I hired her son and a couple of his friends. It worked for a little while. It didn't work long term. I started out with an IF I didn't really know. Didn't really work out. Then later I got a better IF, but that didn't work for too long because they wanted to be more co-employer than sole employer, and they wanted to tell me more about what I should do than I was comfortable with, and so they refused to be my IF, and so all of a sudden I didn't even have an IF, and that's when Doug came to my rescue, and he's been with me ever since. When I first started, there was no FMS, and how we did that was really complicated. Yeah, and then one of my staff decided to steal the payroll, and so that's when everything changed after that. I think that helped spur them on to getting FMS because it wasn't too many years after that, but yeah, we got an FMS. Hiring and building a team is a process. It's a process. And then sometimes things go wrong that aren't even in your control. At first I had rotating staff, and that worked. But then they did cut that in 2009, 2008, when the budget cuts happened, I lost 10% of my budget, and I could no longer continue to do my program as it was. So to save money, I invited one of my staff to become a live-in caregiver so that we didn't have to worry about overtime. It worked for a little while, but they started to take advantage of the fact that they lived there. They brought drugs and alcohol into my home, and that wasn't okay. with me, but I didn't know how to fix it. We did eventually get that solved. It's complicated. Like building a team is something you continually do because staff leave. Their lives change. They move out of town. They have children. So you're constantly replacing staff. There's a number of ways to do that. There's companies like Indeed. There's Facebook. I've actually found some of my staff on Facebook. I go to church officials and say, hey, I'm looking for staff. Do you know somebody who needs a job? Sometimes neighbors. I think the important thing is to remember that it's fluid. You can't latch on to a staff member and expect them to be there forever because they're not going to be. The only staff member I have that never leaves until they die is my service dog, which is why my service dog is so important to me. They're the one staff that never leaves until they die. And then they start.
For us, I kind of look back, it's hard to explain it because things have changed so much. Back in the old days, 6 years ago, is how I felt when I started thinking about this question. COVID was going on, and but we actually were able to do the person-centered plan with an independent facilitator. The one thing that was important about the independent facilitator, there weren't really hardly any around, but I knew she felt like I did. She wanted the most independence for her son. She wanted him to live the best life possible, but she also knew he needed the support to be able to safely do that. So when I chose her, I knew we would think the same way. And I think the other thing that was getting supports going, there really wasn't much out there. But when I offered staff people more than minimum wage, they were like, where do I sign up? They might have been working for an independent living services company or, some other place that, that I had gotten to know them, and then they would be willing, to be hired. Her one staff stayed on until the day she passed away. So she was a great staff. We were really blessed to have her. We kind of mixed it up. We used some vendors, and then we used some individuals that we hired too. So that's the beauty of self-determination, that you are able to keep a vendor if you like them and if it's going well. And so we did keep, a vendor on board. The other was services, like what class is she gonna go to, what activity? And they're gonna be like FMS, a financial management service, IRC. A lot of people don't know much about regional centers. And I just went in cold turkey and said, hey, how many people do you need to start a new cooking class? Luckily, I knew that owner, and she was like 6. Called a couple friends, and we had 6 people ready for a cooking class within a couple weeks. So that's when we started adding on to her life. The other class I went in cold turkey to, an art class, and she said, I've been wanting to do that. I'm the new owner here. Who knew? And so she was willing, and now that class has a wait. Both of those classes have long wait lists, and have been able to open up other classes. So you do have to be tenacious and just kind of go for it. And it seems like it all falls into place together. And then eventually they're willing to pay for, to get invoiced versus getting paid like a traditional business would. So it is a little tricky, especially with DDS directives and how it's allowed to be paid. It's definitely not allowed to be paid like the typical customer that would utilize that art class. And so that is a challenge to kind of find a workaround. But it's been great to have doors open to us. Karate classes, a lot of different ones that I see now in her friend group that they're able to participate in. And it's taken time, but they've opened the doors, and I think that's the whole point, that there's choice, and they're able to open doors to us and our kids, even though they're adults, a lot of them, want to go to those places, and they want to see their friends, and they have great friend groups now. And then if they're tired of the class, they can leave and go to a different one. So that's the freedom part.
Well, first of all, kind of in the old days with her again. In the beginning, in addition to the orientation, I went ahead and learned how to be an independent facilitator, even though I didn't plan on being one technically at that point in time. But so that was helpful. Also, the regional center and my service coordinator was very helpful. The FMS actually came out to my residence, and so I had a chance to meet them personally. And so I really got some hand-holding for me in the very beginning with that. And the independent facilitator, I always want to say IF at this point, was also very helpful. So they were very much so wanting to know what my son needed. And it was very person-centered for me in terms of what is my son already doing, what does he want to do, and who can provide that type of service. For me, it was some of the vendors that were already there. There was no point of not using them if they were working. And then there was a combination of using people that had their own businesses and employees. So it was a mix of all of the above. And again, it just went back to what does my son's life look like now, and what does he want it to look like, and who can provide that service. And I would say that it was approached no differently than who do you want to be around your child? Who do you want to be around your loved one or yourself? And so part of those things go back with background checks. Who do they feel comfortable with? If it's an adult, my son's 24 now, but who do you feel comfortable with if it's a child, if it's an adult, etc. So I would say it's approaching it in terms of a business perspective, but also a very personal thing at the same time, because you want someone that is literally going to be able to appreciate what's happening and also get something out of it, meaning it's a fair exchange in terms of they have a chance and opportunity to also benefit from the business perspective as well as providing a service, and also an opportunity for your child or your person to be more integrated into the community. So it was great for me in a creative way to be able to think and to have those conversations with different businesses, and even have some of those where it may be virtual. Living out kind of in parts of the high desert or different places, service providers can come and go, as Tina said, and you don't really have control over that. But at times, the good part about self-determination is that you can pay different rates. So that's something, again, where it comes into the business part of saying what's going to be a good fit for that employee, for you, or maybe even the vendor. And I will say this, sometimes vendors, you have to just make sure that even if they're providing services under traditional, that it's going to be the same rate outside in self-determination. So that's kind of it. I just approached it in the same way that, I would want for my son to have his life, how he'd want to, and who needs to be a part of that life.
I got very lucky because when the first year that I was on SDP was, I did not use the IF at all. I did it myself. And how I look at SDP is, I treat it as a business, all right? That's the way I look at it. In order for a business to survive, you're gonna have to pay your own bills. So this is where the responsibility comes in. You don't pay for the service, you're not going to get the service. So I'm very on top of it, and I pay all my vendors. Now, when I was picking my vendors, I knew who I wanted. I went with people that I trust in my faith community, and what was good for me. So they didn't know, but I was kind of doing an interview, talking to them. And then when this program was coming, then I was able to go. That's how I went. I didn't go to Indeed or the internet or Facebook. And that's how I build my team that I have right now.
Well, for me, in the process of building my own team, it's hard for me because I've been looking for people to work with me, and I haven't found people yet. So I'm still looking, I'm still building my own team, because it's hard to find people that to trust, you know, because to walk into your house, because I have a daughter, so I need to be careful who I hire. But I'm still building my own team. It's going to take some time, but patience.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's unique to point out that every participant looks different for everyone when they're enrolling into SDP. Okay, this next one. What were some myths or misconceptions you had about the program? What were you prepared for, and what were you expecting or not expecting? Just, but
Es que si me salgo se sale. Ya busqué en todas las redes, en el teléfono.
Well, I think
Solo era
one of
por
the
texto.
first myths was that I thought I really had to do it by myself. You don't have to do it by yourself. That's actually the point. You put a team together and they do it with you. And I think part of it was, they tell you you're the boss, but in the beginning it's hard to understand what that means. Like, my concept of what a boss was is different than what my concept of what a boss is now. So, back then I thought, well, if you're the boss, you're in charge, you have to figure everything out. But in self-determination is not what it means. It means you're the boss of who you decide to be. You're the boss of telling people what you want and need and training them the ways to help you. You're responsible for making sure that they do what they're supposed to do, but that doesn't mean you yell at people. It doesn't mean you get angry and throw tantrums, because that's counterproductive and you'll just lose them. It means you have to walk a fine line. It's a balancing act, because I advocate for myself as much as I advocate for my team. Because if I don't work hard to make sure that their paychecks get paid, then they can't afford to work for me. So it's my job to make sure that my IF puts enough money in the right category to make sure that I can cover overtime and holiday pay and important things that my staff expects. Because one of the myths is that your FMS does everything like that, and they don't. If you don't put it in your plan, your staff doesn't get it. So if you don't specifically ask for holiday pay, your staff won't get it, and it makes it really hard to get anyone to come to work on holidays. So think ahead, plan ahead, and then ask for what you want and need and what your staff wants and needs, because part of being a boss isn't being bossy, it's taking care of your team. It's more like you're the mom of the team. You remind them to do the dishes, or you remind them to help you with the things they said that they would, but you do it with love and patience, because people have good days and bad days. That includes me, that includes my staff. Everybody has good days and bad days. There's days when too many things happen and the dishes aren't going to get done, and you have to just let it go. But you can't let things go forever or your house becomes a disaster. So it's a balancing act, really.
Misconceptions. I think that I would understand the program once we went through the process, and I was still confused. She entered August 1st, and I started attending a independent facilitator coaching training that same month. because I needed to know enough to support her the best way and understand self-determination. Never did I know that I would be working with lots of other clients after that, but it's been a great fit for me personally, but for her, I was able to support her better. So I think going to everything you can. The state council has a bunch of things that are free, that are virtual.